Hi. So, peace, light, and love to everybody. And I was actually participating in an online meditation, and then technical reasons it didn't work. And I thought, why don't I use the time to suggest some reading? I don't know if you can find it online. When Things Fall Apart, these are hard advice for difficult times by Pema Choron. I don't know if you can pronounce her name. She's an amazing Buddhist teacher. And so let me read some what she says. Intimacy with fear. Fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth. So embarking on the spiritual journey is like getting into a very small boat and setting out on the ocean to serve lands. With all-hearted practice comes inspiration, but sooner or later we will alter fear. For all we know, when we get to the horizon, we are going to drop the edge of the world. Imagine those first explorers that came to the New World. They had no idea whether they're not going to fall off the face of the earth. And sometimes it feels of uncertainty. I think there's like something going on strange here. Just a minute, I'm going to figure it out. All right, so for all we know, when we get to the horizon, drop off the face of the earth. We're going to drop off like all explorers, we are drawn to discover what's waiting out there without knowing, yet if we have the courage to face it. Courage. If we become interested in Buddhism and decide to find out what it has to offer, we'll soon discover that there are different slants on how we can proceed. With insight meditation, we begin practicing mindfulness, being fully present with all our activities and thoughts. With Zen practice, we hear teachings on emptiness, and challenge to connect with the open, unbounded clarity of the mind. So you have different, uh, you know, different types of approaches in this spiritual practice. So let me skip a bit. Fear is a universal experience. Even the smallest insects feels it. Actually, you can see it in animals quite clearly. The flight or fight, right? We wade in the tidal pools and put our fingers near the soft, open bodies of sea anemones, and they close up. Sea anemones spontaneously does that. It's not a terrible thing that we feel fear when faced with the unknown. It is part of being alive, something we all share. We react against the possibility of loneliness, death, not having anything to hold on to. Fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth. If we commit ourselves to staying right where we are, then our experience becomes very vivid. Things become very clear when there is escape. During a long retreat, she says, I had what seemed earth-shaking revelation. We cannot be in the present and run our storylines at the same time. Sounds interesting. It sounds obvious, but when you discover something like this for yourself, it changes you. It becomes vivid in the present moment. So do compassion and wonder and courage. In fact, anyone who stands on the edge of the unknown, fully in the present, without reference point, groundlessness. That's when our understanding goes deeper, when we find that the present moment is a pretty vulnerable place, and that this can be completely unnerving and completely tender. When we begin our exploration, we have all kinds of ideals, expectations. We're looking for answers that will satisfy a hunger we felt for a long time. But the last thing we want is a further introduction to the boogeyman. Of course, people do try to harm us. What we're talking about is getting to know fear, becoming familiar with fear, looking it right in the eye, not as a way to solve problems, but as a complex undoing of old ways of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and thinking. Begin to do this, we're going to be continually humbled. There's not going to be much room for arrogance that holding on to ideals can bring. The arrogance inevitably does arise is going to be continually by our own courage to step forward a little further. The kinds of discoveries that are made through practice have nothing to do with believing in anything. They have much more to do with having the courage to die continually. Instructions on mindfulness or emptiness or working with energy all point to the same thing, being right on the nail. It nails us right to the point of time and space that we're in. When we stop there and don't act out, don't repress, don't blame it on anyone else, and also don't blame it on ourselves, then we meet it with an open-ended question that has no concern. We also encounter our heart. As one student so eloquently put it, Buddha nature, cleverly disguised as fear, kicks our ass into being receptive. Wow. So, the most heartbreaking thing is when we cheat ourselves at the present moment. So, I'll sum up this chapter. The trick is to keep exploring, not to bail out, even when we find out that something is not what we thought. That's what we're going to do. Discover again and again and again. Nothing is what we thought. I say that with great emptiness is not what we thought. Neither is mindfulness or fear. Compassion, not what we thought. Love, Buddha, nature, courage. These are code words for things we don't know in our minds, but any of us experience them. These are words that point to what life really is when we let things fall apart, let ourselves nail to the present moment. When things fall apart and we're on the verge, the test of each one of us is to stay on the brink and not concretize. The spiritual journey is not about heaven and finally getting to a place that's really swell. So I'm going to be reading this longer. At the end, I want to conclude with this. We can shut down and feel resentment, or we can touch reality. There is definitely something tender and throbbing about groundlessness. Letting there be room for not knowing is the most important. So, some lasting pleasure and avoid pain is what the Buddhism called samsara. It goes round and round endlessly and causes us to suffer greatly. The very first noble truth of the Buddha points out that suffering is inevitable for human beings as long as we believe that things last, they don't disintegrate, that they can be counted on to satisfy our hunger for security. From this point of view, the only time we ever know what's really going on is when the rug's been pulled out, not anywhere to land. We use these situations either to wake ourselves up or put our sense of rightness is the seed of taking care of those who need our care and of discovering our goodness. So, life is a good teacher and a good friend. Things are always in transition. If we could only realize it, nothing ever sums itself up in what we like to dream about. The off-center, in-between state is an ideal situation in which we don't get caught, and we can open our beyond limits. To stay with that shakiness, the rumbling stomach, with a feeling of hopelessness and wanting to get revenge, that is the path of true awakening. Sticking with that uncertainty, getting the knack of relaxing in the midst of chaos, learning not to panic. This is the spiritual path. Getting the knack of catching ourselves. Catching ourselves is the path of the warrior. We catch ourselves 1,000,000,000 times as once again, whether we like it or not. We could think about aggression everywhere, all over the world. Everybody always strikes out at the enemy, and the pain escalates for forever. Every day we could reflect on and ask ourselves, am I going to add to the aggression of the world? Every day things get edgy, we can just ask ourselves, am I going to practice peace? Or am I going to? That's spot on. So thank you very much for 10 minutes of me. Peace, light, and love. Happy holiday time for you. from Corona Corner. Yogi.